Richard Calloway hadn't ducked behind a flower pot since he was about 7 years old. Now at 58, with a net worth exceeding $400 million, he commanded a team of staff and security, yet found himself pressed against a stone planter on his own driveway because a 10-year-old boy had seized his sleeve and spoken with absolute certainty, "Don't move. Follow me." Richard complied, though the reason remained unclear. The boy, named Theo, was the grandson of the estate's groundskeeper, and had arrived for the weekend while his mother was away. Freckled and serious-eyed, dressed in a navy sweater too large for him, Theo possessed the quiet, observational nature of a child who speaks only when he has something meaningful to contribute. Darius, the towering head of security, stood by the car with his back turned, prepared to transport Richard to an airport departure in 90 minutes. "What exactly are we doing?" Richard whispered. Theo raised one finger. "Wait." Richard complied, having arrived at the estate that morning in excellent condition, always excellent, a state he'd maintained for 7 years following his wife Carol's death, responding to each challenge by working harder, moving faster, filling his calendar until no quiet remained for grief to take root. This approach had proven successful. The company's value had tripled, his schedule remained flawless, and he felt consistently fine. Theo had been present since Friday, much to George's apologies, which Richard had dismissed as inconsequential. Yet Theo possessed an uncanny ability to appear where he was least expected. On Saturday morning, Richard discovered him perched on the library steps, absorbed in a book about migratory birds with the intense focus of a serious researcher. Later that afternoon, Theo observed Richard from the terrace during a phone call, watching with the curious intensity of a child seeking to understand, then inquired, "Do you always look like that when you talk to people?" "Like what?" Richard replied. "Like you're already somewhere else." Richard had no satisfactory response. Sunday evening brought Theo's unexpected intervention as Richard walked toward his car, luggage in hand for another business trip. "Don't move. Follow me." Richard crouched behind geranium-filled planters while Darius waited 20 feet away. "Theo," he whispered, "I have a plane." "I know," Theo replied without looking up, his attention fixed on something near the garden gate. "Just wait." "For what?" "You'll see." Richard scanned the gate area but saw nothing. Then he heard it, a small brown bird perched on the iron post, singing not for mating display but simply because it felt like singing. Theo watched with rapt attention while Richard observed his grandson's devotion. The bird's melody lasted 40 seconds before it flew into the palms. "It comes every Sunday," Theo explained. "Same time, same post. Grandpa showed me." Richard examined the post, realizing his groundskeeper had noticed this ritual. "Your grandfather observed that. He notices everything that happens in this garden," Theo said matter-of-factly. "He's worked here for 12 years and knows every plant, every visiting bird which flowers bloom first each morning." A pause. "He mentioned you've never asked him about any of this." Richard remained silent. "He's not upset about it," Theo added carefully. "He just said it. I asked him what you were like, and that's what he said. You walk through the garden but don't really see it. The evening light cast long shadows across stone pathways, palm trees catching the dying sun." "You pulled me behind a flower pot," Richard said slowly, "to show me a bird." "I pulled you behind a flower pot so you'd have to stop," Theo replied with that direct, unembellished gaze. "You were walking right past it. You walked past everything." Richard had no answer. Darius, maintaining professional neutrality, observed the scene with practiced detachment. Richard rose slowly, dusting off his jacket, then truly looked at the garden, really seeing it for the first time in 12 years. The evening light bathed the stone planters Carol had selected during their travels, long before the company's meteoric rise, before his calendar filled with endless commitments. He had paid for beautiful maintenance but never paused to listen to birdsong. Sitting back down beside Theo on the planter's edge, Richard heard Darius mention a flight delay without drama. "Tell me about the garden," Richard requested. Theo confirmed his sincerity before launching into detailed observations about geranium blooming patterns, soil pH factors, and the white-throated sparrow's seasonal migrations. He described how the evening light transformed the gate's stone at this precise hour and latitude, creating a particular gold that his grandfather called gold that knows it's leaving. Richard listened, not the distracted listening of business calls, but genuine attention. He rescheduled his departure, admitting to his long-serving assistant that yes, everything was fine, probably the first voluntary flight miss in years. George joined them afterward, and together they walked the garden while he shared 12 years of intimate knowledge about the land's character. Richard absorbed everything with the focused attention of someone discovering something he didn't realize he'd lost. When Theo returned indoors, he paused at the doorway. "Same time next Sunday?" he asked about the bird. Richard nodded, confirming he'd be there. Theo departed and George lingered briefly. After his grandson left, Richard finally looked at George directly, truly looked for the first time in 12 years of casual morning greetings. "Owe you a conversation," Richard said. "Several, probably." George accepted the apology with the patient smile of a man who'd waited a long time but didn't need the gesture. "The garden will still be here," he replied. "It always is." Richard didn't transform overnight. Business continued, schedules persisted, flights departed as planned. But something fundamental shifted in those 40 seconds between stone planter and iron gate post, where a small bird chose to sing at Sunday's end. He began walking through the garden with open eyes, learning names of plants and flowers, asking questions, and genuinely listening to answers. Every Sunday evening at the appointed hour, he stood at the gate waiting for that small brown bird his groundskeeper's grandson deemed worth stopping the world for. In time, Richard understood this was the most valuable gift anyone had offered him in years. All it required was a 10-year-old's urgent grip on his sleeve and the simple instruction, "Don't move, follow me," followed by his own decision to stop walking past everything.